Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lawrence Singleton, Dean of the Lubin School of Business, and I'd like to welcome you to the Dean's Roundtable today. I'm really honored to have with us Mr. Steve Figliuolo, who's a graduate of Lubin from 1979 with a BBA. He joined Flagstar Bank in June 2014 as Chief Risk Officer. In this role, he's responsible for the governance and corporate oversight of the bank's safety and soundness policies and practices. He's a seasoned bank executive with more than 35 years of experience in the financial service industry and a strong background in enterprise risk management. Prior to Flagstar, he served as Executive Vice President and Chief Risk Officer of Citizens Republic Bank, a position he held for 8 years. He's also held executive positions with Fleet Boston Financial Summit Bank, First Union National Bank, and Chase Manhattan Bank. During his career, he's managed a number of activities, including commercial and consumer loan operations. Other areas of experience and expertise include compliance, process flow management, and risk reduction through improved internal controls. He's also served as a panelist and speaker on various banking industry forums on risk management, regulatory compliance, and compensation risk. I've had the opportunity to get to know Mr. Figliuolo a couple of times, a couple of calls, and I'm really honored to have him with us today on the Dean's Roundtable. So with that, let me welcome him to Dean's Roundtable and ask him to introduce himself and tell a little about his story. Stephen?
Sure. Thank you, Larry, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you and hope that in the 40 minutes or hour that we spend together, I can say some things that would resonate with you. And so, as Dean said, I graduated Pace University in 1979, and I'm sure you weren't even born, some of you, at that time. But the interesting point here in embarking on the career was that I was in the accounting as an accounting major and was going to venture out in public accounting. And I was specifically recruited because I was a PACE graduate. And I was recruited because some partners at the firm had gone to Pace University and other universities in New York. And so they chose to go back to the alma mater and recruit there. And so my first job and entry into the working world was because I actually went to Pace University. And I didn't start at Pace. I actually started at Nassau Community College in Long Island, where I grew up. And I decided that that I wanted to understand the business world because I thought that I would do something managing a business, or that's what I wanted to do. And so you all know why you got to Pace, and I know why I got there too, because I felt like it had one of the best reputations of a private school in the business segment and accounting. And so it was very interesting because if I didn't go to Pace, I don't know how the recruitment process would have worked, although I can tell you in '79, accountants, and they still are today, are in high demand. So you had a schedule of who was going to visit, and I'm sure Dean has that same type of experience. And if you work with, your office, and Dean, I'm not sure what they call the office today, but it was career development, back at that time.
Career services now, career services.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they would tell you who was coming on campus. You would have your resume out there and either be selected, for an interview or not. But that's how it really started. So I spent 3 years in public accounting because I wanted to at least have the 2 years so that when I sat for the CPA exam, that I would have the ability to become a CPA having that public accounting experience. So I can tell you that although Larry is a CPA, I am not, because I never passed all, in New York State, you needed to pass 2 parts at any one time. So I was always that guy who passed law, but didn't pass the other parts, or passed problems, but didn't pass, the other parts. And, but nevertheless, I was in public accounting for 3 years, and I went to a small firm in upstate New York because I wanted various experiences. I didn't want to just audit entities. I wanted to do some what we call write-up work, tax work, and some advisory work. And I felt that I could get it with a smaller firm. I lived on campus. I felt that that was very important because the experience you get when you are out of your own household is very important as you proceed through life. So went to Pace. First job is in public accounting, and at the time, public accountants in your first 3 years didn't make that much money, and so I felt as if I wanted to raise a family, and I looked for a job where I can use my accounting skills, and I went to Chase Manhattan Bank. And now it's called what, JP Morgan, right? But it was Chase Manhattan Bank at the time. And I moved to Chase Manhattan Bank and was in an area that was called the Accounting Control Department. And we really were charged with being workflow specialists, and in a financial industry, of course, you'd have to understand accounting to maneuver through that. And so as I was working, at Chase Manhattan Bank, what became very apparent to me, and I've had some people that mentored me along the way. And so one of the reasons, when I was asked would I like to do something like this is, I want to give back what people gave me over the years, okay? And so what I did learn was that if you're conceptual and you can solve problems and you want to manage other people, then that's your ticket to putting yourself in a position to have opportunities come to you, okay? And so your career really never goes as you plan it. And what you should be looking at is, how do I put myself in an opportunity that I would be recognized for, the next step of whatever that career progression would be for you, okay? And so I stayed at Chase for 10 years. And so one of my first assignments was to look at an area of the bank that had management issues and was management and accounting issues. And so I went in for 6 months and started understanding what was happening and what was going wrong. And I was, I was 26 years old. And so I would just describe it as the area was kind of like blowing up around me. Okay, so for those of you that are in business or accounting, they were reconciling items and all kinds of differences. And it was really an area that was managing the checks that had to be processed for the bank, okay? And as checks have to be processed for the bank, that all happens through the Federal Reserve Bank. Chase has an account with the Federal Reserve Bank. Checks come in, your account is charged for that, and then you charge your customers. Well, that process wasn't working smoothly for the bank, and it was a lot of money at the time. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars that flowed through that on a daily basis. And so before I know it, I'm being asked would I like to manage this entire area? Now, maybe they thought, hey, this guy might know what he's doing, but maybe he's the only one that, would want to even tackle this. And so my feeling was that I didn't move from public accounting to Chase Manhattan Bank and to be timid about an opportunity that would come to me, okay? And so what I really learned was that if you're conceptual and you can execute on those concepts, you'll be recognized. And I never had to post for a job in my career. I was always asked to do the next thing. And so I think when you're thinking about the basics of what you're learning, those are the tools that you would need to understand business. And what was most important that I learned was that the other intangibles, and they're not necessarily intangible, but how do you relate with people? How do you communicate with them? How can you describe a problem? How can you rally people to follow your lead? And so those things were very important to me. And I learned that from watching good managers. And I learned that by watching poor managers and say, oh, that's a quality I don't think I really want to, engage in, okay? Because that doesn't seem like it's helping this person, okay? And so the next part of this career progression moves from Chase Manhattan Bank because there were 3 vice chairmen at Chase Manhattan Bank. One didn't get the chairman's job, so he went over to New Jersey and ran another bank. He then selected individuals that he thought were problem solvers and asked them to come with him to this other bank. And he was going to, the mission at the other bank was to turn it around, make it profitable, build the right lines of business. And I wasn't asked specifically by that individual, but I was asked by somebody that he asked to come over. And so I moved across the river to a bank in New Jersey. It was called First Fidelity Bank at the time, and spent maybe 8 or 9 years there as well. And so that's how my career really advanced, was putting myself in a position to be recognized as a problem solver that can execute on concepts. And I told you that I didn't have the grades really to be considered for, at the time, a big 8 accounting firm. But what I learned was that I don't necessarily need to be the smartest person in the room, and don't want to be the smartest person in the room, but I want to be that individual that could be the best business person in the room. And could I recognize when somebody or something was amiss, okay? Especially in the business world, you'll come to find out that if there are problems that you have to solve, people try to put the best spin on that problem, and it's not necessarily, what the truth is. And so, I'm peppering in all of these kind of, I'll say, experiences in my life that could help you as I take you through the career. And so, we spent 8 years at First Fidelity Bank, and then it was sold to another bank, First Union. That's when Dean mentioned, I was with First Union for a while. And then I stayed a couple of years at First Union running the Northeast operation for them. And so my path was accounting into bank operations. The next move after that was to be asked to come to another bank, Summit Bank, that you heard. And it was the same group of individuals that left Chase and went to this other bank. And so, they understood that I could solve problems. and execute, in a manner that was agreeable to those that would report up through my chain of command. And so now I'll get to how did I become a chief risk officer, because I did a talk with individuals a while ago, I think in the fall, from Pace University, and they're actually in a risk management master's program, and that didn't exist when Dean and I went to college. There was no such thing, okay, and risk managers, were rare. And so I was recruited to a bank up in Michigan from the New York area to run their operation. And so I decided I would do that. And I was in that job for maybe 3 years. And the size of the bank at the time, this was Citizens Bank at the time, was under $10 billion. And the Federal Reserve let the bank know that they've got to create an enterprise-wide risk management program. And so the CEO came to me and said, and this is what he actually said to me, I can do two things. I can either go outside and try to find somebody, or I would like to ask you to consider to do this job and put this together. I knew nothing about how to put together a enterprise-wide risk management program. And I think he was kind of surprised. And I was still a relatively young man. I was 44 years old at the time. And so I asked him if I could have 2 weeks to think about it, and he said, well, why would you need to think about it? I said, because it doesn't exist at our company today. And I would want to make sure that I had the backing of, the executive team, because if I don't have you behind me, I don't want a job. And I use the word, I don't want to be a paper tiger. Okay. So I don't want a job that would exist and look good in the hierarchy of our structure. I wanted it to be effective so that we could really reduce risk in the company. And so, I spent 10 years there, and we sold that bank to another bank because mergers and acquisitions were, continuing to happen back in those years, as they will now over the next 2 years. And then from that experience, I was asked to come to Flagstar Bank, which was a company that probably would have gone bankrupt, but they had a hedge fund that came in and added capital of $1 billion. And so the former CEO that I worked with at Citizens Bank recommended me to the new CEO of Flagstar Bank. And so I flew up there. We talked about it, and what was really important to me at this time in my career, and so I was let's see, in my 50s at the time. I understood what my gifts were. I understood what I was good at. I understood that I could protect an organization by the structure of building a risk management program. And I felt as if, for any of you that played any kind of sports, that I was better protecting other individuals than being out in the limelight, right? And so I didn't necessarily aspire to be the CEO, but I knew how to protect the CEO. And so we hit it off, and Flagstar was a company that could have failed, and it didn't, because we had the capital infusion. And so when I took that job and I was interviewed by the board, they asked me what my feeling was. And I said, well, here's my feeling, that we've already won because we've had the capital infusion. the only thing we can do are two things. We can quit or we can win, okay? And I felt like we had already won because the heavy lifting of the capital bolstering the company was performed. So now it was a matter of fixing the structure. And so, I was comfortable with doing that. And this is probably going to sound terrible to you, but I'm just speaking the way I normally would, okay? I do remember at one point in time when we sold Citizens Bank, I was interviewed by Bank Director magazine, and you'd have to ask your company if you're allowed to do the interview, and then you would look at that and make sure that, make sure that everything that you said was accurate, okay? And so I never forgot this question, right? And so the individual who interviewed me, we talked about mergers and acquisitions and what was important, and so one of the last questions was, I understand that enterprise-wide risk managers make more than $1 million a year. And so I said, well, that's not me. I don't make more than $1 million a year. And so if you were to Google me, you would see that that actually came true, okay? And I didn't do this, for that. And I never even dreamed that that would, be the salary level that I would be making at one point in time. And so that's my journey. And I probably took a longer time in going through that journey. And this much I can let you know that for those in our company and for those individuals like you that are receptive to the things that I've learned, you can call me at any time. You can email me at any time. I have all the time in the world for individuals who are receptive to a message and willing to execute on that. And I can help you through that. So, with that, Larry, that's kind of my winding road story as to where I got to where I am today. And I'm not shy about this. I'm 64 years old. I love what I do, but I love what I do because I'm grounded in faith, and this is my mission ground, okay? This is where I was put to convey to individuals that you can be ethical, you could be moral, and you can always do the next right thing in the business world. It's not about greed. It's not about doing bad things to get ahead. It's about doing the next right thing. And so that's why it's very rewarding for me. And you could see me maybe getting emotional here. It truly is very rewarding for that reason. And that's how I view it.
This is great. I really appreciate you sharing your story with the students here today. Obviously, he's a very successful alumnus of Lubin. And you should Google him and Google his salary because he's very successful. He's well-grounded. It's not just for the money. It's all about doing the right thing. I'd like to open the floor up now for questions from students.
So you mentioned some maybe bad traits that you notice in some managers. I'm wondering if you can give us some examples of that and how maybe you thought about avoiding those or turning them into good traits maybe.
Yeah, so bad traits to me would be individuals who don't listen well, okay? And so they have an agenda in their mind and they're not objective about what could go wrong in the plan that they want to execute. And so if Anna, you were in a meeting and said, hey, have we thought about this? But if you were so intent on trying to move forward, you would be walking into a situation where there could be trouble ahead for you. And so I remember at my career at Chase, working for a senior vice president at the time, he used to say, if I'm walking down the garden path, you have to tell me if I'm gonna, come across anything that's dangerous. So I think there are traits in individuals where they just don't listen well, and they are so headstrong on moving forward with their plan that they don't necessarily see some of the pitfalls that you can bring to their attention, because you see things differently than others, and a good manager doesn't want to, a good manager wants to use everybody else around them and make them all better, okay? And if you can do that, then you foster this open dialogue of including everybody in a solution. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question in the chat. There are many instances where you made the best decision for yourself. Sometimes it seems hard to say no in business or to your manager with fear of losing your job. How can you keep to your morals and values and what you think is right? Because the situation can become uncomfortable.
If you're asked to do something that you think isn't the next right thing, you know what, you shouldn't do it. And if you're with a company that is a reputable company with seasoned executives, and here's what a seasoned executive is. Seasoned executive is somebody who's secure in who they are, okay? And so you should not be afraid to say no, to an opportunity or an assignment if you think it's the wrong thing. That will be valued more than saying no, okay? And if you do get fired, and if you thought you were going to get fired, you're probably with the wrong company, okay? Because that's not how you should be operating in the business world. And good companies don't operate that way. They really don't operate that way.
A follow-up to that question. What is the right manager for you? How do you identify what is the best style? And how do you figure out if they are a good manager?
So first, I think you have to decide for yourself, are you an individual contributor, and do you like to manage things versus do you want to manage other people and lead other people and inspire them to get the job done that the company needs to get done, okay? So you'd have to understand that and determine first, does the assignment, right, and the manager suit my skill sets and my gifts, right? And so that's one way to, that's one way to understand that. And then the other way to understand what the right manager is for you is, I think is built upon trust, okay? So I can tell you what the wrong manager for me was. And when I first took the assignment at Citizens Bank that we talked about, right? I didn't know the person I was working for. And we had a strategy in which we wanted to roll out. And so we would meet on a weekly basis, and I would run through where I stood on certain assignments. And then I'd get a call the next day from him on how are you doing with that assignment, right? And so I figured, okay, well, maybe he's trying to understand, if I could really execute or not. And then he called me 2 days later. And finally, and this was in the first week, I said to this fellow, if you're going to contact me like this every other day, we are probably not right for each other. Just know that I will tell you when I'm hitting a roadblock that I need you to, clear for me. because you're going to drive me crazy if you keep contacting me about, where I stand on that. And so I hope in that story you got something out of it. That's going to be based upon your individual style of how you like to be managed. And that's why I opened up with, are you a manager of things or are you a manager of, people? And it really comes down to trust, okay? So if you are a trusted advisor to the person you're working for and they are secure, and a secure manager is a manager who says, Anna, you know what? I see the skill sets you have. Who's your backup? Who are you grooming to take your job? Because you're going to be better served in this part of the company. An insecure manager is going to be a manager who will tell you, will not necessarily tell you that you're doing a good job, but will push a lot of work to you, okay? And have you believe that you really can't move anywhere else in the company and you have to stay with me, okay? And so those are two examples that I've seen in my career. And I actually worked for that kind of manager one time and knew that I had to figure out a way to move away from that individual. So I hope that answers the question.
Hi, Stephen. Brian Comandini. My question for you is, you had a very long career and very successful career, but when did you know it was time to move on from, say, Chase Bank or another bank to a new opportunity, when you could have just stayed where you were at and possibly, worked your way through the ranks at that banks?
I think, well, first of all, the opportunities were presented to me, okay? And each opportunity, Dean and I were speaking before we let you into the chat room, okay? And what I recognized is experience sometimes is worth more when it's not with the company that you're with, okay? And so it depends upon how married you are to that company, all right? And so, but repeat the question again, because I am 64, so repeat it again, because there was another half that I wanted to explain here.
The question was, how did you know when the right time was to move on to a new opportunity that was presented to you instead of staying where you were at?
So this is my own personal bias, and this is how I viewed it in my career. If I was in a job at a company where I was there for 5 years or more, I felt as if I was getting stale, and I felt as if I was becoming a steward of the business as opposed to seeing things fresh. And so if opportunities presented themselves at the company I was with that enabled me to move somewhere else in the company, that would be suitable to me, because I'm a real believer that people in the job for too long, you don't see all the things that you need to see. So for me, the magic mark is 5 or 6 years, not to jump to another company, but because if you look at the career, it's almost it's almost a 40-year career, right? And so there are 5 or 6 companies there. Most of them were because there was a merger or acquisition, right? And but that's how I think about it, and what I do within my own group, and I feel it's, as a senior executive, it's my role and responsibility to identify future leaders of the company. That's really what we're supposed to be doing. And so it doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule. It's going to come down to putting yourself in an opportunity to be recognized at the company you're with, or somebody you're working with at the company you're with may leave and know that you are a problem solver, you're conceptual, and you can execute. Or you might have a specific skill set that's needed where you manage data and things, which is, important as well. So it's no hard and fast rule. And I would say this, you're all gifted with instincts. Trust your instincts. And never be afraid to take a risk, okay? So sometimes what you think is safe turns out not to be safe at all, and there's always something better for you, and your career will never go as you have planned it. I couldn't tell you back in '79 that I would be a chief risk officer. But here's what the Pace University graduate who recruited me to the accounting firm said to me when I told him that I was leaving the company. So he said to me, Steve, there are no hard feelings. You worked hard for our company. And he said, you will rise to the level that you're supposed to be at wherever you are. And I never forgot those words because, they were very encouraging. And so you all will rise to the level that you're supposed to be at, and put yourself in a position to have the opportunities come to you.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm very interested in tell you are talking about the not being paper tiger.
Right.
Yeah. For how, I'd like you to share about this. How can you avoid, some kind of a situation in the company or in the firm that no one want to be a paper tiger, to be either defense or offense. So what do you, manage this kind of a situation? And the first question, the second part of the question, how do you see this right before those force you to be the paper tiger in order to be defense?
Yeah, so I think that comes down to you have to be able to prove to others that you add value to them, okay? So if I can take on an assignment that would add value to them, then they understand that you're important, and you won't just be a paper tiger, okay? You'll be a trusted advisor and somebody that they know can solve a problem for them. So to me, that was very important. But in the conversation I had with taking on this risk role for the first time and building it for the company, if I didn't have other executives who embraced it, it would have gone nowhere, okay? So the other executives had to embrace that this is how we're moving to help keep the company. And, Dean mentioned I was responsible for safety and soundness. And so when you're at a financial institution, that's how you think about it. But my answer would be that myself and my team has to really prove their worth to others. And the way they do that is help them improve in their jobs and how they do things. And so I hope I answered both parts of those questions. So maybe I can really help clarify this with a story that you'll be able to get something out of, okay? Mm-hmm. When I was asked to come to Flagstar Bank, I was there for about 2 weeks, and the bank wasn't well managed. And so the entire management team, there are 7 of us who have been together there for 4 years, the CEO, the head of mortgage banking, the CFO, and myself, okay? And after 2 weeks of assessing the situation, it was the first board meeting. And so I go to the first board meeting, and a bank is heavily regulated. And we were under what they called supervisory actions from the Fed, from the OCC, which is the Office of the Control of the Currency, and the Bureau, which is the CFPB, if you study the banking sector. And so their first question was, when do you think you'll be able to get us out of the regulatory orders? And I said, this takes at least 24 to 36 months. So get it out of your head that this is going to be something that happens quickly. And then secondly, I was asked, when you build out the program, how do you know when it's mature? And I said, here's how you would know it would be mature. And here's the answer to your question, Sophia. The answer to your question is, I said, for the first year and a half to 2 years, when we organize an enterprise-wide risk management organization, we won't be liked. We will be considered policemen of the company. And then we would slowly move from being a policing force to trusted in certain areas because they see the value that we bring. And then the third phase of this is my team would become workflow specialists that change a workflow to eliminate the risk that's associated with that workflow. And so maybe that's a way to get the message across about how you add value.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I really got your wisdom.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question in the chat going back to managers. How can you articulate how you want to be managed to your supervisor? Is that an appropriate conversation to have? And if so, when?
Yeah, it is an appropriate conversation to have, and it's most appropriate when there is a level of trust in the quality of your work, okay? And so you have more latitude and free rein when you can be independent and the person you're working for understands that you'll tell them if you're delayed, you'll tell them why you're delayed, and you'll be fully transparent with them. So when you think that that relationship is mature enough, because you've demonstrated you've demonstrated through your actions that you get your job done, you get it done with little supervision, minor corrections, and then you can have that conversation. Now, that would be if you're starting out. If you're more seasoned, like I was, and I told you that story when I went to Citizens Bank, I mean, I was in a position to say, hey, if you're going to manage me this way, you picked the wrong person for the job because I don't work well that way. Just know that I'm honest, and I'll tell you when we have a problem. You'll never be blindsided by me. So I hope that answers the question.
If someone wants to, have the kind of career that you had, let's say at Flagstar or at another bank, what would you encourage them to do in terms of entering the bank? At what kind of position should they be seeking when they're right out of school? Or are there multiple paths? Or maybe, I'm sure there's multiple paths. But
yeah, there are multiple paths. So I would say think about what you like to do. Okay. So think about the things that you're good at and think about the things that you like to do, and try to get into a career path or an entry-level job that you would be satisfied with, okay? And so if you like numbers and if you like crunching numbers, then maybe if you're going into a financial institution, a role of a credit analyst would be a good job. We hire multiple credit analysts every year to come in and understand the balance sheet, the income statement of our potential or prospect loan customers, right? So if you like that kind of work, that would be something that you you would do. If you're in a program that's IT related, of course, you know, information security is probably the hottest profession right now for financial services industries, because what we really manage is information. And so that would be, you know, that would be an area to go in. And then I would say this, and which I've given this feedback to individuals. If when you come in and you do your job, if you feel that you're acting the part, it's probably not the right job for you. Okay, it's your mind and your body are telling you that if I have to step in the office and put on the clothes of an actor to do this job, that's probably not the right, you know, job for me. I've got to do something that suits my personality type and the characteristics that I possess. And so that would be my advice there.
Vladimir, I see your comment that you posted. He did say he's into finance. He's having a hard time figuring out what entry-level position he should get into. Someone outside of the field recommended that he be a teller first, but he's interested in doing something more analytical.
Yeah, my feeling on, I don't necessarily believe you need to be a teller, okay? It's good experience to have because you interact with individuals. But if you're in finance and you like that, you need to be looking at jobs that would be, we call them, probably Dean did too, the controller's department, okay? It's the accounting department, it's account payable, it's the finance department, it's credit analytics, it is modeling. We have a lot of models that support decisions that we make in our company, as would many companies. And so those would be the areas to look at. And I'm going to give you, you know, the honest answer always. You know, the teller jobs are probably the most demanding jobs at a bank because you're interacting with the public, and sadly, they are probably the lowest paying jobs in, you know, in the company. That's not to say that you can't go into that job and do that for a year or two and then move to what we would call the financial crimes unit, because banks are heavily regulated, and there is an act called the U.S. Patriot Act, and it's an anti-money laundering protection law, right? And so what we do in our company is we actually like to get individuals who were tellers and move them into that type of unit because they understand the interaction between the customer and themselves, and they have a sense about when somebody is attempting to perpetrate, you know, a fraud. And a fraud would be somebody who opens up an account and deposits a couple of good checks and then starts depositing bad checks and understands when that money is available and tries to pull it out of the bank. And, you know, then they flee and go to another bank. I hope that gives you some context as to where you should be looking. It's not necessarily a poor place to start, but if you're a college graduate and you're a finance major, I would look to the controller's department, the accounting department, finance. I'd look for a credit analyst job. I would be looking at those kind of jobs. Go out to financial services companies' websites and look for those type of jobs.
Probably got time for one more question if there's one more from anybody.
Yeah, lastly, you know, I'm just concerned that, you know, being that I'm a student now, that, you know, now is a bad time to even look. because I'm a student and I'm a full-time student, and I'm assuming these roles are going to be full-time.
It's not a bad time to look because most companies have gone to a remote work environment, and we have an internship program at our company. We're not necessarily the biggest company around. We have 5,000 employees and our $30 billion bank, but we do hire at least 60 interns, every season. And what we like to do is then, if they're interested in the company, have them move through the credit analyst role. And so try not to put, if you can understand this, false impediments in front of you. What really is important is in your career is that you have the drive to try, fail, and succeed. And so to me, that's very important, Vladimir. So you may be discouraged, other people may be telling you other things, but don't feel that way. You've got good skills, you're at a good school, and stay positive and ask for help from whomever your higher power is.
That's great advice. And I imagine all the students on this call have recognized, but the advice he's been given is the kind of advice you get after decades as a professional and as a seasoned executive. These are not the things you're going to learn from your peers when you first start school or start working. So I want to thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. This is a wonderful Dean's Roundtables, one of the best I've ever seen, quite frankly, since I've been here.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I truly enjoy it. It is, like I told you, my mission ground. And you could link up with me if you want on LinkedIn. You should get on LinkedIn. And if you want to communicate that way, that's fine. And Dean, I appreciate the invitation from you to spend time here. And I'm more than happy to, to be at your disposal as you see fit.
Thank you. I'll definitely take advantage of that, and I appreciate the offer. We have a small token of our appreciation to send to you. We'll send it to you in Florida. I can't hand it to you through the Zoom link, or I would do that with you this afternoon. But look for something from us soon in the mail. And I want to thank everybody. Thank everybody for being here with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you very much.
Bye.